So hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of the Mystery at the Library Book Club. I'm Rebecca Vnuk, the Executive Director of LibraryReads, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you've been with us for the last year and a half, you know all about LibraryReads, but if you don't, please go to our website, which is www.libraryreads.org, and you can find out all about what we do. If you work in a public library in the US, you can find out how to join us in creating our top 10 list every month and all of the other fun stuff we do. So check out our website. But that's not why you're here. You're here to listen to Ashley Winstead at the 20th. This is the 20th installment of the Mystery at the Library Book Club. That is pretty exciting. Mystery at the Library is brought to you by Sourcebooks and Baker & Taylor. I do have some housekeeping things before we get started. So first of all, we are streaming the event on Zoom and on Facebook Live. So welcome to any of our Facebook watchers tonight. Whether you are on Zoom with us or on Facebook, if you have questions for Ashley, and I know you will, please utilize the Google form that will shortly pop up in the chat box. We like to use that instead of the Q&A box on Zoom. It's just a little easier for us. Feel free to use that chat box to say hi to each other, to chat amongst yourselves, to say hi to us. I know we have a lot of our regulars here tonight, which is delightful. But if you've got questions for Ashley about her writing process or about the book, please put those in the Google form. When you ask a question or participate in the trivia poll halfway through, you're going to be entered into a prize drawing to win a mystery book bundle from our friends at Sourcebooks. And a special for tonight, you are all entered to win a $25 gift card just for being here. So our pals over at Sourcebooks will announce that at the end of the event. So let's get the event started. I am so excited to talk tonight to the author of In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife, Ashley Winstead. Let me tell you a little bit about Ashley. Ashley holds a PhD in Contemporary American Literature from Southern Methodist University and a BA in English and Art History from Vanderbilt University. She lives in Houston, Texas, where she drinks red wine and dreams up novels. Now, if that doesn't sound like just, you know, the invitation to become an author, I don't know what does right there. So hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. I am so excited. I hope you can feel my excitement through the screen. I'm just so happy to be here with you all and to answer all your questions and just dive deep on mysteries and dreams.
Yes, awesome. Let's dive right into it, as a matter of fact. So, all right, I was actually just telling my friends at Sourcebooks that when I read this, I just loved it, right? I mean, first of all, thrillers like this are totally my jam. This is, what do we call this? The dark academia genre, yep. Which, right, I've loved that ever since The Secret History. I think there's always been something about me that, right, I loved college. I loved that kind of those weird formative years where you become an adult, but you're kind of, right, you're sort of sheltered as you become an adult. So I gravitate towards things that happen at colleges and universities. And this did not disappoint. Now, luckily, nothing like this ever happened to me in college.
Thank God.
But I can't wait to talk to you about how you came up with these things that happen to these folks. So the characters, right, I really enjoyed reading your characters, and I have questions for you about them in a minute. But I wanted to just tell everyone, if you've not finished this yet, we probably will try and not do any real spoilers tonight, but it's a little hard to avoid. Hopefully when you come to this, you've read it and you've finished it, so you know the who done it and the why did it and all of that. But there's a lot of characters in this book. They're all fantastically written. You kind of really, I can see them in my head. I feel like I know them. So thumbs up for that. So talking about those people and the setting, this is, of course, happening at a college reunion. So we've got what do we call them? What are they? The seven? The
East House 7.
Yes, the East House 7.
Yeah.
Best friends through college. One of them is murdered, so that means one of them is a suspect. after 10 years, they've all kind of gone their own way-ish, although a couple of them, get engaged, get married, etc. So they're not ever too far from each other. But where the action happens here, we've got a dual timeline. It's now at a college reunion and 10 years ago when they were graduating and all the drama was happening. So tell me a little bit about why you chose college reunion and dark academia as your setting for this book.
Yeah, I love that. You're a reader after my own heart, because I too just want everything academia. I'm so drawn to college settings, to boarding school settings, just
Yes.
there. Those are vibes that I want. And I think there's so much to unpack there with why I think that's true for a lot of readers, and why we've seen a total dark academia boom, I would say, recently.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I did not realize I was participating in as I wrote this book, alone in my office, but it's been very cool to watch. And we can talk more about that. But the reunion, man, I don't think, from a writer's perspective, that there is a single juicier setting than a reunion, like a school reunion. You have there's so much immediately at battle in a reunion. You have the past clashing with the present. You have, these warring emotions going on for everyone. Like, on the one hand, this instinct to be nostalgic and celebrate and valorize the past. And on the other hand, I think that jarring realization that so many of us have at reunions, where we're like, was it always like this? Was that person always a little bit terrible and I just didn't realize? Which I think speaks to the thing I like most as a writer, from a writer's perspective about reunions, which is that you've got that immediate conflict between the past and present versions of each character. And each person who's at a reunion is having this fairly intense confrontation with who they used to be. And that to me is at the heart. I knew I wanted to write in my dreams. I wanted it to be about confronting yourself, confronting the person you used to be, the different versions of you that have existed, what those versions were capable of. And really, if you have grown as much as you think you have. And I think for Jessica especially, but a little bit for all of the characters, all of the East House 7, it's also about confronting yourself in dreams as an antagonist, confronting yourself as a villain, and seeing yourself in a way that you've kind of refused to see for a really long time. So a reunion gives me, as the writer, the chance to put all of that into conflict and to confront my characters with that. And I think in a really visceral way. And the one thing I will add is that I also totally stole from my own life, because I started writing this book 4 months after going to my own 10-year college reunion. Yep. And I am someone who loved my college experience. I was the first person in my family to go to college, so first-gen college student. To me, college felt like a miracle and a golden ticket, and I loved every bit of the 4 years I was there. Or at least that's how I remembered it, and I was just remembering it as this very golden tinged experience. So my expectations going back to my 10-year were so high. I was so excited. I was waiting for the magic to happen, waiting to feel the way I did. And it was like the bottom dropped out. It was so underwhelming. It was not at all the same experience. I was with the same people in the same place and just had none of that same excitement. And of course, being the dramatic writer that I am, I was devastated by this, broke away from all my friends and walked around my college campus, looking at all the same buildings, trying to figure out, why do I feel this way? What's happening to me right now? And of course, the answer is just that everything was the same except for me. I was the one who had changed. And so that was kind of the seed and the spark of the idea that memory making is such a powerful process, self-mythologizing, and the stories that we tell ourselves about our experiences and who we've been throughout our past are just so powerful. And I knew that I wanted to play with that and then up the stakes for Jessica and her crew about what they covered over in their self-mythologizing. So the reunion gave me all that.
That is a great term. I really love that term, self-mythologizing. And it's so true that some memories are better left as memories, right? Like, like you said, you have this golden glow to it, and everything, of course, was perfect. So, do you want to go back and see, was this realistic? And maybe we should just leave things alone in our memory as the good stuff.
Yeah.
But self-mythologizing is an excellent phrase to use, especially for a character like Jessica, who has so much to go, like, it's palpable, this need that she has to stop feeling like she's in second place, or worse, not placed at all. I have to say that you did this excellent job. And again, not trying to spoil too much, but when she finds out that she was not even in the third place running for the fellowship, I felt crushed for her, and she's not even a real person. But you did this marvelous job of really showing us who she is, where she's come from. I really loved the Jessica Miller could not be a more generic name. She never stood out anywhere, and time again, she just gets so disappointed by not making it. And when she discovers most of the time she's not even been in the running, you were just like, oh, yeah, right. So that self-mythology, she has tried to be someone that she is not and is not supposed to be. That, I love it. I love that you said that. That's a great phrase for that. I gotta hang on to that one. That's a good one. So speaking of all of that, most of these characters, right? Like, she's got them sort of on a pedestal, and then the reader quickly sees the wobbling of all the pedestals, right? That everyone is gorgeous and everyone is golden. I think you even describe, is it Mint, that he's got the dark golden hair and the light golden, like he's like this statue.
Yep.
And then we quickly see, though, oh no, these are real people with real flaws, and some of them murderous flaws, which is so everyone in the book has something to hide, right? No one has a perfect past. No one has done things right every time. Everybody's a little bit evil. So tell us a little bit about how you mapped out all of these characters. So did you kind of have them in your mind when you started? And how did you figure out their roles as you went? I know one of the things our audience loves to know is how you organize your plot, basically, and your characters. So tell us about, how did these 7, or really 8, because Courtney is also in that, how did these 8, I know I always felt so bad for her.
I know Courtney would be so mad not to be included in that.
I'm like, sorry, Court, don't kill me. But right, like, how did you sit with these folks? Because that's a lot of characters too. You could have made it easier on yourself and been like, oh no, we've got 3 friends. That's all I'm worried about. Why
didn't I do that? Yeah.
Right? You're an overachiever, I suspect. You're an overachiever. So you got these 8 people. They all have secrets. They all have stories. And then they all have alibis for what's happened that night. So tell us, how did your brain work figuring all that out? We want to know the dirty secrets.
Okay. Well, I love it. And so for me, this book is a character-driven mystery. So it really is all about the characters. And yes, I put a lot of them on the page. I was probably a little ambitious, but I also kept thinking about the experience of being in college and how you immediately have, like, insert yourself into families of people, really. And so I kind of wanted to translate that to the page, which is why they're the East House 7 and not like the East House 4, which in retrospect, would have been a great idea of mine. But no, I'm an extremely meticulous plotter and planner. So for In My Dreams, I knew that everything was about the characters. I set this challenge for myself before I ever started drafting, because I have to do all of this pre-planning work before I can even touch my page, really.
Okay.
Like the thing in my brain. And I like shout out to Lisa Cron's Story Genius, which is a craft book that I use for character development. So any writers in the audience, like if you haven't checked that book out, I highly recommend it. But my first thing that I did was character mapping for each of the characters, like from including Eric, which I know someone in the chat pointed out, Eric, Courtney, the East House 7. I did a really deep, that was Lisa Cron Story Genius.
Story Genius. Okay,
Story
great.
Genius, yeah, that I love. I'd have to dig it out from this pile of books, but I have it
You're
here.
like, I have it right next to me.
Yeah, I keep it very close to my heart because it's wonderful. Yes, thank you, Emily. So I always start with my characters, and this is Lisa's argument, if I can call her Lisa, because we're now best friends, at least in my head, that everything should start with characters, and your plot, a really powerful plot, flows from character. And I subscribe to that wholeheartedly, because the challenge I set for myself with In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is that I knew I wanted each of these characters to be a plausible suspect in Heather's death. And in order to make them plausible, like make the reader really think, okay, this one could be the one, like this person could have done it, I needed to root their like reason for suspicion in their central misbelief, in their like central desire, like the thing they want most in the world. So first I had to figure out what that thing was for each of the characters. And then I had to figure out how Heather Shelby was going to threaten that thing. And so that required, for all of these characters, a lot of really meticulous relationship mapping. So I kind of did character development and then a lot of relationship mapping, where I did so much pre-work figuring out like, oh, this is where, you know, how Frankie and Coop have hung out in the past. And none of that made it onto the page, but I was hoping it would, you know, kind of help me in my mind write them in a really believable way. So it was like ended up being, from that point, character mapping, a 42-page outline, where I outlined the entire book from start to finish, printed it out, highlighted each like character thread in a different color, and actually taped it up on my wall so I could
I was just gonna say, I'm picturing like the CSI wall with the red threads on the pins that go to everyone.
Yes. Or like that character in Always Sunny, Charlie Day, who's like trying to solve a crime but is doing a terrible job at it. It's like, that was me. That's a little more accurate to probably where I was.
I love it.
But yeah, that's so it. Yeah, all came down to the characters. Spent so much time on that first.
Well, it definitely shows. I mean, I really, this is why I feel like I knew everything I needed to know about these people, and I knew, you know, kind of what they were all about. And so your work definitely shows. And what I loved though was that even though they have these full backgrounds and these full personalities, I did not guess until it happened. Like I up until the reveal, I was not really sure who had done it. So huge congratulations on that. Your work absolutely, you can tell. These are great characters.
So
they also, now I know this isn't one of the questions that we kind of talked about beforehand, but I'm going to throw this at you anyway. It also felt to me like I could see it in my head, right? So like as a TV series or a movie, have you thought, were you thinking about that when you were writing? Like, how can is this movie material? Have you ever, you know, tell me your thoughts on sort of that. Like, cause I would watch the heck out of this as a Netflix series, let me tell you.
Thank you. From your lips to Netflix exec
Are you
ears. Listening? Yes, I've had readers say that they want to start a petition to Netflix, and I'm like,
yes,
please, yes, that sounds wonderful. No, that's so wonderful to hear, because that is kind of how my brain works, is that I see it like a movie. Like it plays out, and I try so hard, to translate the visual experience in my head to the page. And I also do this thing where, you know, fan edits of TV shows and movies. Like if you got a character relationship that you really ship really hard, and you'll go and watch like fan edits. I, in my head, made fan edits for like Jess and Coop and other characters. And so I just was really trying visually to capture emotion. Yeah, so I would love to see it play out on screen one day. And
Yes, I would too. I think it's really great.
thank you.
So let's talk a little bit more about our characters here. So Jessica, she's, you know, she's the center of our story here. And from the beginning, we get this really big sense of her that she really views the world in kind of black and white, good and bad, right? And she thinks of herself and of all of the others. Like, this is what's good about them. This is what's bad about them. There's not a lot of in between for her. And yet, as the book goes on, we see all of the shades in between on everybody, right? Like, no one is a pure evil character. No one is as good as they seem on the surface. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of developed the characters with these different dimensions, I guess. Do you think that people in real life can be all good or all bad? Or do you think, no, we're all kind of like book characters and we have these rules of degrees of good and bad? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Always what interests me, well, first of all, I'll just start and say I totally don't think that anyone is wholly good or wholly bad. And in fact, that's what I like about people. And I think that that's what makes really compelling characters, if they follow those rules and feel like they're real life people in all of their different shades of gray morality. What I will say, like, a few things. Jessica's instinct to parse the world and to kind of label people as good or bad, to me, is a total defensive instinct. Like, she feels really compelled to look at people, look at herself and say, oh, very good for these reasons, and I'll enumerate them in my narrative, and, you know, look at her friends and say that, and then look at other people and say, like, oh, I see that is a bad person, that's very legible to me, I can parse that, now I know what badness is. That to me is a complete defense mechanism on her part, because as the reader very quickly comes to understand, I think, in being in Jessica's head, is that she has a lot of bad in her, and either she is willfully not, you know, unwilling to see it, or she sees it and is trying so hard to deny it. And I think the thing that, like, that to me is a very understandable instinct. I don't know.
It's very
But
human nature.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
totally.
human nature. And it's kind of funny because I love this question so much, because I also get very tickled by reader responses to the characters in this book, to all of the characters, but Jessica in particular, because I feel like it amuses me when reader experiences mirror what Jessica does to people in the book. When readers say, like, oh, they're terrible people, like, oh my God, all of them are horrible people, especially Jessica, like, can't relate, irredeemable. And I just sit there and I'm like, is that so? Can't relate at all to jealousy, or, you know,
What do
or
you think
like,
about yourself when you think that?
I know, and I just chuckle to myself because I'm like, methinks someone is having a defensive response to seeing something that might resonate. But like, that Jessica's central pain, like her deep wound, is the fact that she, like you alluded to before, she sees herself in a way no one else sees. Like, the version of herself that exists, the world will not recognize it. The world will not affirm it. The mirrors just won't reflect this image of her back.
Yeah.
And that leads her into madness to some extent. It leads her into a lot of really dark places. But I think what's so interesting about fictional characters is that readers are willing to go on this ride with them. So like, when readers read Jessica kind of descending into madness, or like uncovering her descent into madness and all the traces it's left, you know, there's this, I think, willingness to examine and have empathy for the fact that, yes, she's doing a lot of bad things, and so are these characters, but I see this wound where it's coming from, and I actually have felt that way myself. You know, overlooked, slighted, like the world won't recognize me for who I want to be. and I can see if taken to extremes. I'm putting words in readers' mouths right now. So
No, I get it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that to me is the beauty of fictional characters. So I will die on the hill of morally gray, complex characters because I think they are just who we are put on
Yes.
page.
I love it. So you in the if people have the hardcover, I'm not sure if this was in the galley copy or not, but you've got some questions in there. And one of the things, I just wanted to come back to this super quickly because it really struck me when you said this, that you, oh, where was it? It was basically that the reason that you like to kind of read some of these characters. Oh, here we go. When I pick up, if I can read you your own words back.
That's
When
such a
I
fun
pick up,
experience.
right? You weren't expecting this.
Nope.
When I pick up a psychological thriller as a reader, I'm asking it for one thing. Tell me who I am, the parts I haven't figured out yet for myself. And I read that and I was like, oh, like I had to sit with that for a minute because I feel that way too, right? Like one of the things I always tell people in my favorite books that I've got are because I like to recognize myself in books, even if it's not, even if the character is not my age or my race or my background. I love it. I love seeing those human details, the things that we all go through.
Yeah.
But I never thought about that, about psychological suspense. I usually think of it when I'm reading romance or when I'm reading chick lit or women's fiction, right? And it's like, oh, that's why I like psychological suspense so much, because, you know, we all have our dark bits and it's interesting to see them on the page and think, ooh, what would I do if this was me in this situation? If I had those wounds, right?
Yep.
How would I react to these situations? And so I just wanted to tell you, I really loved that answer that you gave. And I think a lot of readers, you know, that is what attracts us to fiction, right? Is the human condition. And we love reading something knowing that the things we think are what other people think as well. And so I love kind of applying that even to the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
I think it kind of goes along with the reason why people love unreliable narrators so much is because we're all kind of unreliable narrators in
Yes.
in
Thank you
our
for
own
saying
ways,
that. We are. We
right?
absolutely are.
So I definitely, even though this was not an unreliable, I mean, she's sort of unreliable in that she doesn't have all of her memories until the end, but she's not being a sneaky unreliable narrative. She's not trying to cover up something that she very well knows. But I got that same kind of feeling that I get when I really love an unreliable narrator. So anyway, I just wanted to.
No, yeah, Jessica isn't trying to lie to the reader. She's lying to herself.
Lying to herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And gee, I don't know what that's like at all.
Yeah,
No,
never
I'm
experienced
perfect.
it. Don't know
right?
where that came from.
Right.
Just pulled it out of the ether. No,
Yeah.
I love that you said that, because reading is just one of like, what a gorgeous way to experiment with like the outer limits of possibilities within yourself.
I love it. That is, can you say that again so I can write it down? I'm like, just quote, I'm gonna put that quote on my wall. It's perfect. You are just exactly perfect. All right. So I know we want to get to our poll and our audience questions, but I do have one final scripted, if you will, question. And that is that we know you have another book that's coming out this year. I'm very excited. Can you tell us a little bit about your next book?
Yes. So it's called The Last Housewife, and I am so excited about it. I like to joke that the same has been true of both the thrillers that I've written so far, that both the writing processes, like after the meticulous planning part, the drafting part has been like a fever dream experience. And so I barely remember the actual drafting of writing in my dreams, and I barely remember I blinked. Yep. And there's a book on the page. But anyway, that's a note on my process of not much process. But The Last Housewife follows a woman whose name is Shada Roy. She's a 30-year-old Texas woman. She is in Dallas, and one day she finds out that her best friend from college has been found dead and she finds out from her favorite true crime podcast. So she finds
Ooh.
out that not only is her college best friend, who she hasn't spoken to in 8 years, dead, but her body has been found on their old college campus. And in the exact same manner that another woman's body was found on campus 8 years ago. But Shay, our main character, is the only person in the world who knows that last detail.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, so like she thinks to herself, well, I'm sitting on this knowledge. The cops aren't going to be able to complete a thorough investigation. So she decides she's going to do something she said she was never going to do. She goes back to her college town, which she ran from, vowed she'd never go back to. She starts to trace the threads of her former best friend's life since college, and it leads her into this dark, seductive underworld, like this world of secret society, kind of world of wealth and privilege, and strange, brutal ritual that looks very familiar to her.
Oh,
Yes, I'm calling
that
this
sounds hot.
this is my
All
quick
right.
revenge thriller. So look out for it in
Excellent.
April.
Excellent, excellent. I love it. And I see our Sourcebooks folks have put a link to request a galley copy of that. So get clicking on that, everybody. All right. This then is a good time to transition into the audience participation poll. Yay! So as we have noted, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is a dark academia title. So we're going to have a poll pop up in just a moment that's got movies, TV shows, and books containing a similar dark academia theme. And your task is to answer which of the following is your favorite. So I see question 1 is up there. We've got the dark academia films to choose from. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, the question is going to be entered into the comment section, so you can utilize that and they'll flip those over. Don't forget, every time you participate in an activity or ask a question, you'll be entered to win the mystery prize pack. So we've got question 1 there, and we're going to have 2 more coming up. And while you guys are thinking about your favorite titles here from these lists, Ashley, I would love to know what kind of books you read and if you've got any recommendations. Do you read a lot in this genre, or you're like, no, I read fluffy, gentle romance?
All of the above.
Tell us about what you like to read.
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I read everything. So I'm just like absolutely voracious. I've got to follow my like dark, gutting thrillers and horror with some light, fluffy romance. But I am just very obsessed with dark academia as a subgenre of, especially of crime fiction. And so my favorite books that I've read this past year, like of course you have your OGs, your Secret History by Donna Tartt, like you've got those just foundational like texts of the genre, but recent ones that I've loved and highly recommend. So Vera Kurian's Never Saw Me Coming. That book came out, I think September 7th or something, in September. And it's just absolutely phenomenal. This is a book set on a college campus that follows a program for psychopaths. And so the premise is your main character, well, it's narrated by a few different characters, but your main character, Chloe, is a diagnosed psychopath. And she is attending this program and in exchange for a free scholarship, but what she's really there to do is to hunt down a student named Will. For reasons you find out. So it's just so delicious. And really this book, the thing I love most about this book is that it just flips the script on like a woman being the predator in a book. And I just love that. And I love Bad Habits by Amy Gentry that came out, I think in February of 2021. And it's about a grad school murder mystery. And it's just a total cat and mouse game. It's phenomenal. Amy Gentry's writing blows my mind. She's who I want to be a few years down the road. And I also loved These Violent Delights by Micah Nemerover. And so it is a a kind of dark academia set at, I think it's a state school in Pennsylvania, that follows two boys who feel like outcasts, and who kind of form a really, really intense relationship and then start to do darker and darker things. Yeah. Oh, and the last is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. And this is just like a fabulous female serial killer book set on college campus. So can't get better than that.
Excellent. Thank you for those suggestions. Those are all in the chat. Sourcebooks has provided the titles there, so don't worry if you didn't get a chance to write them all down. You can find them in the chat. And then let's see what our poll results were. So Dark Academia Film, Dead Poets Society is the winner. That I would totally say that as well, mostly because it had really cute guys and it came out when I was in high school. So, you know, yes, Dead Poet Society, thumbs up.
Such a good
All
one.
right. How about a TV show? Oh, Umbrella Academy, that would have been my vote. Series of Unfortunate Events, The Magicians, and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which, ooh, I didn't realize was kind of school set. I'll have to check that one out. All right. And then our third one, book, Secret History, Ninth House, that's also a good one. Starless Sea, Picture of Dorian Gray. Well, all right.
We like the classics.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. But yeah, I also wonder if, you know, The Secret History is kind of what everybody sort of thinks of, right? Because she really kind of blasted out with that book. So that's definitely, that would have been my pick for sure. All right. Thank you everyone who participated into that. So now let's get into some of our audience questions. Yay. All right. So let's see here. From Maggie, we have, do you have a favorite character from In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife? And I know that's kind of like asking people what their favorite kid is, but surely at some point in your writing or another, you identified someone and maybe it changed throughout, but who's your favorite character that you wrote, Ashley?
Yeah, I totally have a favorite kid. I'm that like terrible mother. I love Coop. And
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like side with most, if not all readers of In My Dreams I Hold a Knife in choosing Coop. And I'm also really happy about that because I partially wrote Coop to be the reader's perspective, or like reflect the reader, what I anticipated the reader's perspective would be in the book. So he's the character who most often gets to say like, Jessica, I shake you by the shoulders. Right. Like, this is not, why are you crying about like this sorority thing? Or, you know, it's this whole system is designed to make you feel bad about yourself, or like snap out of it. And I figured that that would be the reader's interjection if they could in these moments. And so I think that the fact that Coop served that function, you know, develops a sort of intimacy between that character and the reader because they see so much of themselves in him. But also he's a dreamboat and he wears a leather jacket and rides a motorcycle and just loves Jessica for good or bad, just unconditionally.
Yes, there's one point where she says something about, I think maybe it's about her dad, and she's like, wow, even though you knew all of this bad stuff about me, you still asked me to run away with you. And it's like, oh yes, he did.
That, to me, that's unconditional. Like that's romance right there. Right? When someone knows all the people you've killed and like all the dirty skeletons in your closet, and they're like, let's do this thing.
Still likes you anyway, right? That's the sign.
Yeah.
All right. So we have several mentions here in the questions about what we were just discussing, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So I have Lisa and Kathleen, who are both interested to know if that book influenced you in any way, or if maybe even if other dark academia books influenced you, or did you just kind of come to this as without that?
Yeah, I totally came to it without it. In fact, only like, so I read a lot of academic set books or campus set novels prior to writing in my dreams, but didn't do a deep dive into dark academia, and actually didn't even know what dark academia meant while I was writing this book. It's been so fascinating to be a part of this like boom in dark academia, as I think we as like writers and scholars, which I'll always still claim even though I'm no longer working in academia, but as we kind of like define for ourselves and each other like what dark academia means and what it encompasses, I've loved participating in a lot of those conversations through like essays and talks and things like that. But no, I didn't read The Secret History or dark academic style novels before writing Dreams. I read a lot of books that really, to go back to my mythologizing word, just like mythologize school campuses. And I think it happens a lot in kids lit, you know, in YA. Of course, you have your dark boarding school settings. You're seeing more of that in YA as well, like Ace of Spades and so on. But you know, you historically, you have your Harry Potters, you have your Hogwarts, you have your like school as the site of escape, freedom, and betterment of oneself, which I think is like such a powerful idea that has been prevalent not only in literature, but in kind of like the American mythology, right? Education is the thing that lifts us.
Yes.
And that I think is like the thing that writers like myself and the writers I mentioned in my recs are kind of reacting to and trying to complicate, is that vision of but yeah, I didn't read The Secret History. That was a long way of saying no.
Well,
I didn't read it.
I love that explanation. That's great. Okay, we have a question from Miriam who would like to know, how did you craft the two timelines? Did you write them at the same time, or did you write two separate plots and then interweave them together?
I love that question because I knew I had to write a dual timeline book. Like I never strayed from that vision of it in my head, because like Jessica says in the book, the past is so much present with me. It's still a tape rolling in my head. So I wanted to create that same sort of visceral experience, that immediate experience for the reader. And I wrote them one after the other. I wrote this book in chronological order. So chapter by, not at all chronological order, but in order of chapters. So I, wrote the present, then flipped back to the past. And I think I was able to do that because of that bananas outline I mentioned, where I worked out all the details ahead of time. But the only thing that irks me sometimes in dual timeline books is when you revisit scenes that you've already seen from like a different perspective, and sometimes it's done really well, but for the most part as a reader, I'm always like, okay, I know this, like, let's get to the next thing. And so I wanted to write it the way that I did, not interweaving, so that whether we were in the past or present, we were always progressing the story forward and revealing a new piece of information the reader didn't know. And how did I keep track of it? God bless my editor, Shayna Drays, who may or may not be in this chat, but she created the most, after all my plotting and planning, the most meticulous Excel spreadsheet and breakdown of the order of things.
Oh, fascinating.
We just made sure that everything we had covered, as many plot holes as we could possibly within our power do.
That's great. Thank you for that little sneak peek. I love that. Okay. We have a question from Donna who says, that title, I have to ask how you came up with it. It's killer, pun intended. So tell us about this very dramatic title. It's like, you can't just say it in a normal voice even. You have to put like that little bit of drama. In my dreams, I hold a knife. Like, tell us about that.
Oh my gosh, I will say, okay, I do love my title. But one thing is, when I get asked in casual conversation by people who like don't know, who are just like, I've met my new neighbors, like we just moved into a new place, or like at the grocery store, and then I'm like, yes, it comes out that I'm a writer, and they ask for the title of my book, I always take like a deep flowing breath, and I'm like, in my dreams, I hold a knife, and the reaction is always the same, just like, okay, like, like casual steps retreating backwards to like flee from me as fast as possible. But no, I always, so the original title for this book before, again, my wonderful editor, Shayna, was East House 7. So straight to the point, trying to do a little Leanne Moriarty sort of like Monterey 5 thing with that. And my editor challenged me to do better and to create a more evocative title. And so after, I kid you not, 300 titles that I sent her for my poor editor, we like both put our fingers on In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. And the for me, the knife of the title is obviously metaphorical because we've got the actual scissors as the murder weapon. For me, it's the sword of Damocles. It's like what this In My Dreams I Hold a Knife represents is like the specter of Jessica's ambition and her guilt, and this kind of like escalating, this thing that's hanging over her head from page 1 throughout the entire story. This question of what is she capable of? What was her ambition? How much was her ambition? What did it drive her to do? Did she hold a knife or a pair of scissors? And dreams and like the subconscious self are such a big part of this book as well, that to me that kind of just laced together. And I've loved all the reader questions about the knife of the title and like how it compares to the scissors, because it opens up this big conversation about like metaphorical titles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
That's where it came from.
Excellent. We have a question from Morgan who would like to know, did you know from the very beginning which friend was going to be the killer?
Oh, yes. It was.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Actually, you know what? I will confess, I think that, yes, originally I always knew who was going to be the killer, and I am very proud of myself for dancing around that and not naming the killer. Keeping this like a tiny bit spoiler free.
Right.
I always knew, and in fact, I usually cannot write a book without knowing the ending.
That is that's another question. Yep. Okay.
Yep. I cannot write a book without knowing the ending. So that always, I have to hammer that out first. So I always knew that it was going to be the character, but I wrote several different versions of the ending.
Oh, okay.
In fact, you have that final twist that happens, which I won't spoil either, but I wrote several different versions of that. And in fact, I wrote one where Jessica does, well, I'll say this because, well, I don't know. Anyway, I wrote one in which Jessica is the murderer.
People can mute it at this point. They know we're talking about it, right?
Yes. I wrote a version of the ending in which I like swept away what I had planned and made Jessica the murderer because I wanted to see what it would look like, because the other versions of my ending just didn't feel good enough, didn't feel like enough of a gut punch. And it didn't work either with Jessica as the murderer. And it took me a while until I finally realized, like, so I always knew, I went back to the original murderer, and then I finally figured out that final twist at the end, because I reread my manuscript and I realized that of all the things that Jessica learns to do, like nothing greater than weaponize her own passivity. Right? Like she has these experiences where she's looked over and she's ignored and she's invisible, and she learns in escalating measures to use that as a power and as a weapon against people. And it clicked for me that she would do that in the most devastating way with Heather. And so that's when I was like, okay, I figured out what it is that Jessica really did.
There you go. Brilliant. I love it. I love it. All right. We have some similar questions I'm going to group together a little bit. Kathleen and Beth are both curious. What was the reaction to this from your college friends? Or, you know, when you went, you started off by saying you had gone to your 10th reunion, and so were people like, or tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yes. I love this question so much. So my college friends have eaten this book up. And I like to think it's because it's a good book, but I know the truth is it's because they're searching for clues as to like, did I make someone a character?
Right.
Yeah, no, all my college friends on my group text, once they heard the kind of synopsis for this book, and I sent it to them, they read it, they were like, oh my God, break it down for us. Like, who's who? Which one am I? Like, they all
Which one
fully
am I?
thought that I had written them. And I was like, friends, do you want to be in this book? Like, why are you so eagerly inserting yourself into this book? Like, I wouldn't want to be told I was any of these characters, honestly. And so that to me was hilarious. And I just had a like Vandy of my undergrad, Vanderbilt alum book club meeting, actually, where they read this book, and it was many similar questions about who was who. So that's their reaction: extreme excitement, and then deflation once they figure out that I didn't write
That
real
these
people
aren't real
into it.
people, right?
Yeah. Yep,
They thought maybe
exactly.
you were hiding something from your
Exactly. They're
college
like,
days.
now the truth is revealed. Here's the story.
Oh, very fun. All right. We have a question from Maggie who would like to know, how did working in academia or higher ed influence this book? So tell us a little bit about that in your background.
Yeah, such a great question too. I think working in academia is the thing, because I kind of talked earlier about how I had this golden ticket experience that I totally built up in my head about my undergraduate life, because like, just like Jessica's, my first experience of like what she calls profound freedom and your whole life stretching out in front of you. And then grad school was like the exact opposite, where it was like the wool was pulled off my eyes, and I saw the inner workings of academia, and I saw college students from the perspective of being like
Oh.
their teacher, really,
Mm-hmm.
and watching young women make bad decisions and do things, put themselves in situations that I knew were risky. And it gave me the distancing and disassociative, to some extent, perspective that I think I needed to then look back at my own college experience, and think about all of the things that were probably true about it that I hadn't realized until now. And yeah, it gave me a lot of mental tools that equipped me with the ability to write that book. And yeah, I will just maybe leave it at that.
Okay. So the insider perspective to get those details correct. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because there are some dark academic books like Amy Gentry's Bad Habits that are about skewering academia. Like, she takes the academic institutions writ large to task for hypocrisy and racism and elitism and all the things we know are issues in most, if not all, institutions. But Dreams is a little bit different, in which it's kind of skewering some of the student expectations and kind of student life. So yeah, I'll leave it there, basically.
Okay.
So I don't
Sounds
ramble.
good. Sounds good. Next question comes from Amber, who would like to know, how did you come to writing? Did you always want to write novels?
No, I thought that I wanted to be a poet. And I went to college to be a poet, and I'm the only person in America, no, I'm just kidding, who has done that. No, I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. And I think most writers have a very similar story, in which it's like, it's a calling. I was 7 years old, and not playing with the other kids, but instead walking around, like rolling sentences in books that I'd read over my tongue to like appreciate the musicality of language and so on. And so, I had it bad from an early age. And tried really, really hard to be a writer for a long time, and just was massively rejected over and over and over again. In fact, like, I call In My Dreams I Hold a Knife my failure book, because I wrote this book in a place of grief and depression over in the middle of a very dark period of my life, where a writing opportunity I thought was going to be my big break and finally results get me closer to being published fell through. And I thought, I've spent decades trying to do this, and why do I keep beating myself against, like beating my head against the wall, trying to do this? You're just not a writer. And you can, so I actually, the more I think about dreams, the more I see it as kind of a story about my own relationship to writing. And now I'm very lucky that I get to say that my failure book was my debut. And that's kind of a nice ending to that story. But yeah, my writing process, many hills and valleys, and much rejection.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
I have another question here from Suzanne, who asks, what was your process for choosing character names? And I would like to take the opportunity to also put in there that I appreciated that you had a good mix of men and women as friends. I think this would have been a very different story if it had been all women. You know, like you could have set this in the sorority house and made it all female, and that would have given it a different kind of edge, I think. So I love the fact that this was this very common friend group, that you've got the boys, you've got the girls, you've got some of them mixing together, some of them don't like each other, etc. So that was great. What made you decide to do that kind of friend group? And then to Suzanne's question, how do you choose names for them and make them kind of, you know, real people?
Yeah, I love that. And maybe a future book will be that like cloistered sorority setting.
Right.
Because I agree, that's like a totally different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what I was interested, well, I knew that I wanted romance to be a really central part of this.
Okay.
I always gravitate, I love a romantic subplot in any book I read. And so I knew that I wanted, you know, there to be like multiple different romances going on and having kind of like a mix of different people and different friends. And I also was really interested in exploring how we perform differently around, like how women perform differently around men and vice versa, and men around men that they're interested in this book as well. And so I knew I wanted to kind of like play with that, because I think that just heightens the stakes of how we're all performing in front of people. And the same was true of like wanting to really explore the effect of Greek life on student identity. But the names thing, Jessica was the easiest because I just researched the most common names the year she was born.
Right.
Yep, and that is literally Jessica Miller. That's the most common first name and surname. And I think all the other characters, I wanted, like, to me, I'm most proud of Mint. And so his name is actually Mark Minter. And I like shortened it to Mint. And to me, that just like immediately conveyed the kind of cool, crisp. It's like a little, cool, crisp, like it's a little money-ish.
It's a rich kid name. The rich kid nickname. Yep.
And I just felt like that really fit him. And then Frankie and Francis, that of course, you know, is like a name that haunts him, that he can never allow to be uttered. And Frankie to me is just such like a warm, intimate sort of thing to, you know, that's like immediate warmth and intimacy. So as I hear myself explaining it, it's just, I guess it's just names that had particular like signification in my brain, like Frankie's a hug.
Yeah, Frankie is like a big teddy bear. I totally, I got that. Yeah. I got that. It worked. Yeah. It worked. Excellent. All right. I think we have time for just one more question, maybe. Let's do, hang on a second, scrolling through here. I just saw one. Where did it go?
Thank you for all of your questions.
Oh yeah, we, you know, I have to say, I think I say this every time, we have the best audience. They have, they come to this so eager to hear what authors have to say, and they come up with these great questions. I just love it. Okay, here we go. We'll end with this one from Carly. So you've got two thrillers under your belt now, this one and the one coming out, academic settings. Are there any other settings that you'd like to explore in the future, or do you think this is going to be my lane now? Is I'm going to write these books set on school campuses? Tell us what you think your plans for the future might be.
Yeah, well, I have some concrete plans, but I will also. You should hear me pitching my agent, because I'm like, okay, and this one's at a school, and this one's at a college, and she's like, no, you have to stop, like. you have to go somewhere else. And so by order of my agent, I am branching out into other settings. But
Okay.
yes, I actually had like the extreme exciting privilege to announce 2 more books with Source Books just this week. So we
Yay!
announced a few days ago that I have 2 more books, the first of which is called Midnight is the Darkest Hour, and it takes place in a southern Louisiana town, a place where it's, you know, there's swampland and woods, and it's just a very evocative and terrifying natural world. And I live here in Houston, the Bayou City, and we're very close to Louisiana, and I have family in Louisiana. So I've spent a lot of time there and had the chance to go into like some of the swampland. And there is just nothing more, I think, immediately viscerally frightening and eerie than some parts of Louisiana, some parts of South Louisiana, especially, you know, those like really beautiful but also frightening like wetlands. And so that is the setting for my 3rd thriller.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. See, that's another thing people love about this program is we always get sneak peeks that nobody else gets. So yay. Thank you for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
And all right. And thank you just in general for spending your evening with me, Ashley. I really enjoyed talking to you. Really loved the book. It's clear from the audience chat that they enjoyed the book as well. So congratulations on that. And we're definitely looking forward to the next ones. Hooray. And thank all of you for participating in the event tonight. Emily has just listed the winner of the gift card. So go ahead and shoot her an email. She's got it listed in the chat, Morgan LaMonica. And then Maggie, Lisa, and Kathleen, you have all won a mystery book bundle. So be sure to get Emily's email there before we close out tonight so you can claim your prize. And thank you all for joining us. I know there are a lot of pulls on everyone's time these days. So the fact that you will sit here and talk about books with us, it just brings me so much happiness. And talking to wonderful authors like Ashley makes me I love everything about this. So thank you again, Ashley, for spending your evening chatting with us. Yay.
Thank you. Such a joy.
Yeah, so glad. So let's talk about really quickly, let's talk about next month's session. So Wednesday, May 25th, 7 p.m. Eastern. This is going to be a police procedural panel, say that one 3 times fast, featuring authors Frederick Wiesel, Luca Veste, and Thomas Keyes. The registration link just went up there in the chat, so go ahead and register early for that one. Thank you again for joining us tonight, everyone. Stay safe and happy reading. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you all so much.